Hey guys, tonight we're rolling back the foggy curtain of time and stepping into a place that smells like damp wool, boiled cabbage, and maybe something worse. We're talking rural Victorian England, where the countryside looks charming from a distance, but the second you get close, your boots sink into a puddle of cow dung, and you realize that romanticized history has done some serious Photoshop work on this era. You probably won't survive this. That's not a joke. Statistically, if you were born into a rural working-class family in, say, 1842, you might not even make it to your 12th birthday. And if you do, it's less of a celebration and more of a quiet nod from the universe saying, well, let's see what else you can handle. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, what time is it where you are, and what city are you listening from? I always love hearing where we're all dreaming from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the center of a tiny village. No more than 30 or 40 cottages clustered around a dirt road that looks more like a trench. The air is thick with chimney smoke and manure, and there's a persistent scent of rot that clings to the back of your throat. It's not one thing, it's everything. Decay is the baseline aroma of your life here. You're used to it though. You've never known otherwise. The cottages, if you can call them that, are lopsided and sagging, made from stone and wattle and daub, with thatched roofs that attract every mouse and spider within a 5-mile radius. Most families live in a single room. Yes, one. You sleep there, eat there, give birth there, and occasionally die there. There's usually one small window which lets in more wind than light, and a door that doesn't quite fit its frame. Let's say you live in one of these charming hovels. You share it with your mother, father, 4 siblings, and possibly your grandfather, who lost a few toes to a bad case of foot rot 2 winters ago. There's one straw mattress for the adults, and the children sleep on the floor. You're one of the lucky ones. Your house has a fire pit. No chimney though, so the smoke just hangs out near the ceiling, giving everything that rich black tar finish. And you're never clean. No one is. Bathing isn't a regular thing. It's more of a yearly tradition, like a birthday or harvest. You might wipe your hands with a rag if you fancy, but most days you just let the grime pile on. It acts like a second skin, one that doesn't come off unless you fall in a river or get caught in a rainstorm. The village itself is a patchwork of filth. Pigs roam freely through the lanes, leaving behind steaming gifts. Geese and chickens flap underfoot. There's no sewer system, so waste is tossed into the ditch that runs along the road, if people bother to walk that far. The phrase night soil exists because folks often empty their chamber pots right out the door. A lot of people think medieval life was disgusting and Victorian life was cleaner. That is deeply incorrect. In many rural towns, especially before the Public Health Acts, people lived more like livestock than like the cleanly Victorians you see in oil paintings. Here's a fun fringe fact. In some villages, the pavement was made of packed manure mixed with straw. It was a kind of do-it-yourself solution to the eternal mud problem. Didn't exactly solve it, but hey, it gave your boots something to stick to. That thick layer of slop was called muck, and it was just part of the landscape. Children played in it, dogs rolled in it. You probably fell face first into it once or twice. But not everything is entirely bleak. There's a rhythm to rural life, even if that rhythm is mostly coughing, trudging, and the occasional scream. You wake with the sun or before it, depending on your chores. No clocks, just roosters and the occasional church bell. The land controls your life. You grow what you eat, and you eat what survives the bugs, blight, and frost. Every season is a gamble. Harvest fails. Guess who's eating moss and boiled bark soup this winter? Scholars still debate just how bad things were in the early Victorian countryside. Some argue that rural life, while physically rough, offered tighter communities and more fresh air than industrial towns. Others point out that the isolation, lack of medical care, and brutal work conditions actually made it worse. The truth probably somewhere in the mud between, and let's not pretend everyone had a farm. You might be a laborer hauling stones for road work, or a shepherd working someone else's flock for pennies. Some jobs were so seasonal and precarious that entire families starved during slow months. Debt was a death sentence, or at least a sentence to the workhouse, which we'll get to later. Spoiler, it's worse than it sounds. Your day ends early because candles cost money and oil lamps are a luxury. Most folks go to bed with the sun, not because they're virtuous, but because it's too dark to do anything else. But sleep isn't restful. The mattress, if you have one, is full of bed bugs. You hear rats under the floorboards, or worse, crawling over the rafters. There's no lock on the door, and your roof leaks when it rains. Every season brings a new disaster: floods, frost, foxes, or fire. You're always one mistake or one sneeze away from total ruin. And yet, people persist. They joke, they sing. Someone always has a fiddle. Someone else bakes a loaf and shares it. The local ale house, even if it's just a room with a bench and a barrel, is where the world feels a bit lighter. In between all the rot and misery, there's still a pulse, a grim, muddy, soot-covered heartbeat that keeps the village alive. Because even when life is rotten, it doesn't stop, and neither do you. You're born on a stormy Tuesday in late November.
Just as the winds shift and the chimney smoke starts blowing back into the room. The midwife is a stout woman who smells like damp leather and root vegetables, and she's delivered almost everyone in the village, though some of them didn't stick around long. She arrives with her cracked hands, a cloth bundle, and a bottle of something sharp that might be gin or just homemade vinegar. You come out screaming, which is a good sign, and are immediately swaddled in an old flannel shirt once worn by your oldest brother, now long dead of something no one could name at the time. There's no hospital. There's not even a doctor nearby, unless someone rides 5 miles to fetch the one who smells like pipe smoke and rum. So instead, the women of the house handle things. Your mother lies panting on a straw mattress, blood soaking the sheets, sweat rolling down her face, her eyes wide with exhaustion, but already darting toward the next crisis. There's no rest after childbirth, no quiet moment, no flower bouquet or congratulatory card. The moment you're out, the fire needs stoking, the bread's burning, and the baby, you, needs feeding, assuming there's any milk to be had. The walls of the cottage do little to block the cold. Winter whistles through the cracks in the stone. Rats scurry across the rafters, and someone's boots stink of the barn. The family crowd in to meet you. No one is really smiling. New babies mean more mouths, and more mouths mean tighter belts. Still, someone carves a mark on the old beam above the hearth. Another soul born under this roof. Another name for the Lord's ledger. From the very beginning, everything hurts. You're swaddled too tightly because that's how babies are kept straight. Loose limbs make for crooked bones. So your arms are bound to your sides and you squirm helplessly. The cloth they use hasn't been washed properly in weeks, maybe months, and your skin breaks out in a rash within days. No one notices. Every baby gets it. You cry, but everyone's used to crying. It's part of the wallpaper. Your mother is already pregnant again by the time you turn 1, and half her attention is spent trying not to faint from exhaustion. One of the most overlooked miseries of rural Victorian infancy is how close you always are to death. Your sister, before you, died before she turned 3. The brother before her lasted 5 months. Infant mortality rates hover around 150 deaths per 1,000 live births in some areas. Diseases like diphtheria, typhus, and the flux, a polite way of saying horrible, endless diarrhea, swoop in like silent predators. No one has heard of germ theory yet. If a baby dies, it's God's will. If it lives, it's because your mother keeps a clean house, though nobody's definition of clean would pass modern inspection. Here's a nasty little fact for your sleep tonight. Babies were sometimes soothed by dipping cloth in laudanum, an opium-based syrup sold cheaply in every village shop. Just a drop on the tongue or tucked in a rag for sucking. You cry? Here, have a little sleep syrup. It calms your nerves and slows your breathing. Many babies never woke back up, but it was common practice, especially for poorer mothers with too many children and no help. You're lucky to survive your first few years. You're fed mostly on watered-down cow's milk, thin porridge, and bits of mashed turnip. Teething biscuits? Never heard of them. Your toys are a wooden spoon and a rock. If you're really lucky, someone might whittle you a tiny horse, which you'll promptly drop into the fireplace. No one replaces it. Life is training you for disappointment early. Your earliest memories are of your mother humming near the fire and your father cursing in the yard. There's always tension, there's always noise. Sometimes your uncle shows up drunk and starts shouting about the coal cacks or those bastards in London, and everyone pretends not to notice. Domestic violence isn't a scandal, it's just Wednesday. The neighbors hear everything through the walls, but they've got their own shouting to worry about. There is one point of joy. Babies are everyone's business. You're passed around like bread at supper. Your grandmother sniffs your head and clucks her tongue. The neighbor girl brings you a pebble she claims is magic. The dog curls at your feet, licking your toes while you giggle uncontrollably. In the middle of so much filth and fatigue, your smile is a bright, irrational thing. No one can afford to stop working, but someone always pauses to poke your belly or blow a raspberry on your cheek. Still, it doesn't take long for the sweetness of babyhood to end. By the time you can walk, you're already expected to help. You toddle out to the yard to feed chickens or collect sticks. You're scolded if you wander too close to the well. You're told to stop crying before you've even learned what feelings are. Childhood here is brief and bleak. There's no time for wonder or imagination, at least not openly. The adults might still mutter stories about fairies in the woods or spirits that live in the hills, but your world is mostly made up of chores, hunger, and cold toes. Scholars argue about just how much attention rural Victorian parents paid to their children. Some sources claim kids were loved and cherished within the limits of poverty. Others suggest children were treated more like miniature adults, useful when helpful, ignored when not. The reality probably lives in the gray. Your parents love you, but their affection is measured in crusts of bread and rare smiles, not kisses or lullabies. When you're not sick with croup or scabbing over with chickenpox, you mostly crawl around barefoot in the dirt, smearing your face with soot and snot. There are no nappies, just cloth and crossed fingers. Someone dunks you in a wash tub once a month, usually after you're caught eating something weird off the floor. You scream the whole time. The water's cold, the soap stings, and your mother's patience is already running on fumes. You're not yet aware that you live in a time when the rural poor are being studied like specimens by well-meaning reformers and horrified city journalists. To them, your life is a cautionary tale, a tragedy to be fixed or forgotten. To you, it's just life. You're alive. And that's more than can be said for the baby next door who died last week of wasting fever. No one knows what that means. The body was buried before anyone could ask. But you're still here, and your story is just getting started. You're barely 5 years old, and already your hands are raw. Not from coloring with chalk or climbing trees. What trees? The one tree near the church is used for hangings and livestock shade. No, your hands are raw from pulling water up from the village well using a thick hemp rope that slices your palms when it's wet. Your job every morning before the sun's fully up is to carry a small wooden pail of water back to the cottage. The pail leaks, your arms shake, but if you spill too much, your father yells, and your mother sigh like the world is crumbling. This is childhood in rural Victorian England. Forget picture books and toys. You're expected to be a little adult with little responsibilities, except with none of the praise and definitely none of the wages. By now your feet are calloused from walking barefoot across gravel paths. Your chores are stacked up like firewood. Sweep the floor with a bundle of twigs, scatter chicken feed, pull weeds from the plot behind the house, then help your older sister scrub the pans with ashes from last night's fire. That's the soap. Ashes. It works kinda, until it doesn't, and then you all just accept that the pan is seasoned.
3. Aren't. Some mornings you wake to frost and realize half the crop is already dead. You just sit there anyway, because it's what you were told to do. You don't ask questions, not unless you like the taste of backhand. The phrase child labor conjures up images of city factories, but rural child labor is its own particular misery. You work beside your parents from the moment you can lift, drag, or carry. Older kids might be out in the fields helping with harvests, hoeing soil, or trailing behind carts to gather the droppings of the horses and oxen. Why? Because manure means fertilized fields, and fertilized fields mean not starving. Every hand counts, even if it's only 3 feet tall and has jelly on it from breakfast. And when the harvest comes, oh, you're out there from dawn to dusk, stomping through wet earth, bending, lifting, bundling, and getting yelled at for doing it all wrong. Your back hurts, your hands bleed, and you lose a toenail to an unfortunate accident with a hoe. No one notices. You wrap it in a rag and keep going. The ground is full of rocks and old bones. Sometimes you imagine the bones are from skeletons or ancient monsters. More likely, they're just from a cow that died in 1812 and was never buried, right? But it's fun to pretend when no one's looking. Here's a strange little detail you don't learn in school. In some rural areas, children were employed to scare crows for 12-hour shifts. Official job title, Scarecrow Boy. You'd climb onto a wooden stool in the middle of a field, flap your arms at anything with feathers, and make whooping sounds when you got bored. If it rained, you just got wet. If you fell asleep, the farmer docked your meager penny wage or clipped your ear. Some kids had to wear burlap sacks with buttons sewn on to rattle when they moved. The goal wasn't comfort, it was being loud enough to spook a hungry bird. As a kid, you start developing survival tactics early. One of them is silence. You learn when to keep your mouth shut and when to nod. You figure out which adult might sneak you a crust of bread and which will cuff your head just for looking tired. You learn how to do things half right so they pass inspection. Perfection is a luxury. Your job is to get through the day without drawing too much attention. Attention often leads to punishment, and punishment leads to you limping for the rest of the week. School? That depends. There might be a dame school in the village run by a widow who charges a penny a week to keep the youngest kids in one room while she teaches letters using the back of a shovel or the soot on the wall. But you can't always go. Some days your parents need you at home. Other days there's no firewood for the school, so it closes. And even when it's open, the older boys just fight and swear. And the only book in the room is a Bible with the Psalms chewed up by mice. And you, being 5 or 6, aren't even at school age yet, really. You're preschool, which means the only education you get is from watching what not to do and who not to backtalk. Your big sister tried reading a verse out loud once and stammered on a long word. The schoolmaster cracked her knuckles so hard they bled. She didn't stammer again, but she also didn't return to school. Some historians argue that rural children were closer to nature and thus better off than their industrial city counterparts. But nature isn't your friend when you're ankle-deep in mud, half-starved and surrounded by biting flies. Sure, you see a fox once in a while or hear owls hoot across the fields, but those are passing details, not treasured memories. You're too busy picking nettles out of your socks and hoping the cows don't kick over the milk pail again. There are sweet moments, though. Your mother hums an old folk tune while she kneads bread. A traveling peddler gives you a pebble with a hole in it and swears it's fairy forged. You and a few other children sneak off to the stream and try to catch fish with your hands, splashing and laughing until someone falls in. You're soaked and in trouble, but for 15 glorious minutes you were just a kid, not a worker, not a burden, just someone laughing in the water with your ribs showing and your hair tangled but your heart light. At night, your chores done, you curl up on a bed of straw or a blanket on the floor near the hearth. You're bone tired, but too itchy to sleep. Fleas live in your clothes. Your brother talks in his sleep. The wind whistles through the cracks in the wall and something, maybe a rat, thumps in the corner. But your eyelids are heavy, and you let yourself drift, knowing that tomorrow you'll do it all again. 'Cause out here, in the middle of nowhere, childhood isn't a phase. It's a crash course in endurance. The itching starts behind your ears. At first, you think it's just the usual grime, dust from the yard, maybe some dried sweat from working the pastures. But then it spreads down your neck, into your scalp, all over your back like a whisper made of thorns. You try to ignore it. Everyone itches. Itching is part of life. But then it becomes something more aggressive, a low-level agony that never quite lets you rest. When you finally get a look in the mirror, more like a warped shard of glass propped against a windowsill, you spot them. Lice, tiny scuttling beige-gray monsters making a meal of your scalp. Your sister has them too. So does your father. Everyone really. It's not something people talk about because there's no point. There's no solution. No shampoos, no dousing powder, unless someone has a cousin who works for a doctor in town, and that's unlikely. So you do what most rural Victorians do. You grin, you scratch, and sometimes you shave everything off. Not for fashion, for survival. Head lice are only the beginning. There's also ringworm, a delightful fungal infection that gives you red circular patches on your skin, usually your arms or scalp. It looks like you've been branded by a drunk angel. It itches and burns and often leaves scars. No one really knows what causes it. Dirty things, probably. The midwife says it's from bad air and recommends a poultice of wet bread and coal dust. You try it once. You smell like toast and pain. It doesn't help. Then there's scabies, mites that burrow under your skin. Yes, under. You've scratched your wrist raw before someone points out the telltale lines, like pencil trails just beneath your flesh. You get a bucket of cold water, a splash of vinegar, and a brush that looks suspiciously like it was meant for horses. Your mother scrubs you until your skin turns bright pink. You scream, she screams back. It's the only way. The thing is, hygiene is less of a concept and more of an aspiration. Bathing, when it happens, is a big deal. The water has to be boiled in the cauldron over the fire, poured into a tin tub, and used by everyone in the family. You are always the last one in, after your father, mother, older brothers, and sisters. By the time it's your turn, the water is lukewarm at best, the color of a weak tea, and smells like a livestock barn. But you hold your breath and slide in, trying not to think about what's floating on the surface. You scrub yourself with a rag and a bar of lye soap, so strong it might be stripping your skin off molecule by molecule. That burning sensation, that's clean, apparently. You come out red, raw, shivering, and barely less itchy than before. The lice are already planning their return. It's not just your body that suffers. Your clothes are a petri dish. You have exactly 2 shirts, one for the week, and one that's been mended so many times it's more thread than fabric. Washing clothes means boiling them in a pot with ashes or a splash of vinegar, then hanging them out on a hedge to dry. You sometimes spot bugs crawling right back in while they're hanging there. You swat them away with a stick and pretend you didn't see it. And the hair combing is a rare event. There's only one comb in the entire house, and it's broken. 3 teeth are missing, and it once got stuck in your sister's curl so badly she cried for an hour. But it's all you have. You dip it in hot water, whisper a prayer, and rake it through your tangled mess of hair like you're plowing a field. The comb gets passed around like a sacred relic. There's a little ceremony to it. Wipe it on your sleeve, hold it up to the light, check for lice, and pass it on. Here's a fun fringe fact. Some rural families hung a small cloth bag of camphor or lavender around a child's neck, believing it
Would ward off lice and disease. It smelled nice, sure, but mostly served as a signal to others that this child has bugs and we've given up. Others tried more desperate measures: kerosene, urine, crushed gooseberries, whatever the neighbors said worked last year. One boy's aunt swears by boiled dock leaves. You try that too. Now you smell like swamp salad. As you get older, you develop strategies. Scratching with a knitting needle, sleeping with your head wrapped in a damp cloth, stealing your father's shaving razor and taking your scalp down to stubble when no one's looking. The relief is brief, but it feels like heaven. A moment where your skin feels like yours again, and not some flea market for parasites. And it's not just the bugs that keep your skin crawling. There's also the rash you get from working in the Hoft. Hay rash is real. It's itchy, red, and spreads across your arms like a map of suffering. Your skin splits in the winter and peels in the summer. Blisters form from carrying buckets or chopping wood. You have calluses on your calluses,
And don't even start on foot rot. Wet shoes, no socks, cold nights, it's a recipe for trench foot even in peacetime. Even scholars get queasy talking about Victorian hygiene. Some argue rural people were closer to the earth and therefore more natural, as if that's a good thing. Others point out that without any understanding of microbes or basic sanitation, even the best efforts were doomed from the start. The debate's ongoing. Were rural Victorians dirty by necessity or by culture? Maybe both, but one thing's certain. You can't smell history through a textbook, and that's probably a blessing. You start noticing how certain houses smell worse than others. Some have dogs, some have dead rats under the floorboards, some just smell like despair. Your own house has a sort of sour milk aroma you've grown used to. The worst is the church. Cold stone, mildew, damp cloaks, and the breath of 40 unwashed parishioners singing hymns in a minor key. You've nearly passed out during communion more than once. Despite all this, no one really complains. Not because they enjoy it, but because there's no alternative. You dream of being clean. You imagine a bath of warm water where you're not rushed or scrubbed with a horse brush. You imagine soft linen, unwheedled soap, and a bed without fleas. It feels like dreaming of the moon, far away, glowing, but unreachable. So you wake each morning and scratch yourself awake. You pull on stiff clothes that haven't fully dried. You comb your hair with fingers that are already bleeding. You live with the itch, because the itch is your reality. It doesn't go away. You just learn to live beside it, like an unwelcome neighbor who'll never move out. You're about 7 when you first hear someone say the word school like it's a punishment. Up until now, you've assumed it's something only richer kids in town do. Something with slates and desks and long-winded men in wigs. But no, apparently you might be going too. Not because anyone wants you to be smart exactly, but because the vicar's wife has decided the village needs moral instruction. And she's convinced the church hall would be better used for a few hours of discipline than it is storing broken pews and mouse nests. So off you go, face half-washed, hair combed with water and desperation, clutching a slate and a stub of chalk like they're precious metals. The schoolroom is a cold, echoing space that smells like mildew, candle wax, and wet wool. There's no real heat unless the fire is lit, and usually it isn't, unless the teacher wants to thaw out his ink pot. Your breath fogs in the air and your fingers are so numb you can barely hold your slate. Welcome to education. You're one of about 20 children crammed onto hard wooden benches, ranging in age from 5 to 14. Some can barely count. Others already know enough arithmetic to do the landlord's sums, which makes them practically royalty. The teacher is a man in his 50s with spectacles perched halfway down his nose and a permanent scowl etched into his face like it was carved there by a chisel. He smells like pipe smoke and failure. His tools of the trade, a thick ruler, a strap, and a patience level measured in grains of sand. School, it turns out, is mostly repetition. You recite prayers, copy letters, and trace your name so many times you forget what it means. A is for apple, he says, even though you haven't seen an actual apple since last Michaelmas. Sometimes he calls you up to the front of the class, and if you stammer or get the sum wrong, the ruler makes a quick appearance. Whack, across the knuckles. Sharp enough to bring tears, but not loud enough for anyone to care. Your slate gets scratched beyond use within a week, and chalk becomes a kind of currency among the kids. The white sticks are swapped for bread crusts or marbles, or once a dead mouse someone insisted was lucky. You hoard a broken piece of chalk like it's treasure and use the edge of your sleeve to wipe the mistakes away, smearing a faint white dust across your clothes that never quite comes off. But not every day is school day. Sometimes you can't go because your father needs you to help in the fields, or your mother is too sick to fetch water and it falls on you, or there's a frost so thick that the cows are frozen into their stalls and no one can walk to the church without risking a shattered ankle. Absence is a constant. No one expects perfect attendance. Education here is just another chore competing with many others. And then there are the kids who never come back. They vanish from the benches without explanation. Some died, some moved, some got put to work, which usually means sent to labor in the next village or given to an aunt with no children of her own and too many pigs to feed. Every week the class shrinks and stretches like dough rising and falling. There's debate among modern scholars about how effective these early village schools really were. Some argue they gave rural children a crucial leg up, helping them escape cycles of poverty. Others point out that the quality of teaching varied wildly, and most of the learning was rote, focused on obedience rather than enlightenment. Either way, your handwriting improves slightly and you can now read most of the signs around the village, even if they don't matter much, and you're not entirely sure what trespassers will be prosecuted really means. Girls' education is even more unpredictable. If you're a girl, you might get sent for a year or two to learn stitching and household scripture, a very polite way of saying how to scrub a floor and keep your mouth shut while you're doing it. Some girls excel at sewing and are sent to town to apprentice as seamstresses. Others get married at 15 and never read another word that isn't on a tin label. If you're lucky, you develop a fondness for reading. You borrow a copy of Pilgrim's Progress from the vicar's niece, or smuggle a half-burned almanac from a rubbish heap and hide it under your bed. You read by firelight, squinting until your eyes ache, turning the pages like they might fall apart in your hands. For a few minutes each night, you're not in a drafty, lice-ridden cottage. You're somewhere else entirely. Inside a book, inside an idea. But not everyone is so lucky. Some of your classmates are half-starved and barely clothed, sent to school with bruises and empty stomachs. One boy has fits, what people now would call seizures, but he's just called touched in the head and left alone. Another girl can't hear well, and the teacher gives up on her entirely, letting her sit in the back and scribble nonsense just to keep her quiet. Here's a grim fringe fact for you. In some rural schools, children were made to memorize deathbed confessions of sinners as moral instruction. You sit there, 7 years old, reciting the final words of a man who murdered his wife or stole a pig and was hanged for it, so you'll know not to misbehave. If it doesn't make sense to you now, it's fine. It never really made sense to the adults either. Still, you go back. Not because you love it, but because you're told to. Because sometimes there's a crust of bread at lunchtime, or a story about Julius Caesar, or a map of the world that shows places you've never heard of. India, the Arctic, Australia. These places might as well be on the moon. But the fact that they exist plants a seed in your brain. Maybe life isn't just mud and cold and shouting. Maybe there's more. You leave the schoolroom most days with a head full of half-remembered psalms and sums, your fingers ink-stained and sore, and your stomach growling. But also sometimes you walk home whispering words to yourself. Big words, strange words, rolling them around on your tongue like they're magic spells. 'Cause maybe, just maybe, they are. Your first tooth falls out and a mouthful of bread so hard it could have doubled as a building material. You don't even notice at first, just a crunch.
5. A coppery tang, and then someone shouting, "You're bleeding!" You spit into your hand, and there it is. One little tooth, ragged at the root, flecked with what might be mold from the bread crust. Everyone laughs. Losing teeth is normal, especially when your diet consists of starch, sugar, and whatever's been dried and stored since last harvest. The adult teeth come in soon enough, crooked and crowded, some already stained dark from the endless cups of weak tea and the total absence of fruit. You learn fast. Your mouth is not your friend. It's a battlefield, and the enemy always wins. By the time you're 12, your gums bleed if you bite anything harder than a boiled potato. Your breath carries that unmistakable Victorian tang, rot, tea, and what can only be described as barnyard adjacent. But no one comments. Everyone smells like that. The blacksmith's wife, your school teacher, the man who sells spoons out of a sack near the church. Smile at any of them, and you'll get a look at some of the worst oral horrors Britain has ever produced. It's a common joke. In fact, you lose teeth like pennies down a well. By your 20s, you'll probably be half-gummed and gurgling your way through a bowl of mush. Now there are dentists, technically, traveling ones usually, or tooth pullers who double as barbers or tanners. The tools they use are more suited for horses than humans. Forceps the size of pliers, bone-handled levers, and a mysterious hook you never want to see used twice. If you're lucky,
There's a local woman who does teeth with fewer tools, but considerably more alcohol. Her secret? A steady hand, a stiff drink, and the ability to ignore screaming. You first encounter one of these practitioners when your older brother gets an abscess. His cheek swells like someone shoved an apple in it, and he moans for 3 days straight, eyes rolling back whenever he tries to eat. The local tooth puller is called in, a red-faced man with a cart full of terrifying, clanking things. No anesthetic, of course, just a bottle of gin and someone to hold you down. You watch as your brother is pinned to a stool, mouth forced open, and then crack. The sound stays with you for weeks. He's lucky, though. He doesn't die of infection, which frankly could have gone either way. Tooth care in rural Victorian England is more superstition than science. You might rub your teeth with salt or a rag dipped in vinegar. Some people chew mint leaves or chalk. A few try baking soda if they've heard of it and can afford it. There's one man in your village who swears by burnt bread crusts as a tooth powder. But he's missing most of his molars and tends to drool when he talks, so the credibility is debatable. The real enemy is sugar. Not the good kind, not your modern sweet tooth, but raw brown sugar sold in cones, hacked into chunks and mixed into everything from weak ale to the rare celebratory pudding. It's addictive and cheap, depending on how the trade ships are doing. You scrape the last bit from the bottom of a barrel sometimes and suck on it like it's gold. It's a treat, sure, but also a slow-acting poison for your teeth. You feel the ache the next morning and pretend not to. Here's a truly cursed little fringe fact. Some Victorians believed toothaches could be cured by wearing dead moles around their necks. Yes, moles, as in small, blind, velvety creatures pulled from the soil and tied like grim jewelry under your collarbone. They said it drew the pain away. Maybe it worked. Maybe you were just so distracted by the smell of decomposing mole that you forgot your jaw was throbbing. If a tooth rots, you don't fix it. You ignore it until it becomes unbearable. Then someone yanks it out. Fillings exist, technically, but not for people like you. Those are for rich Londoners with private physicians and imported novelties like chloroform and gold fillings. You get a sharp tug and a bloody rag to bite on, maybe a sip of gin after if you're lucky. By the time you reach adolescence, your smile is a grim lineup of gaps, chips, and teeth gone gray or black. You start keeping your mouth closed in polite company. Not that anyone would judge. Your father's down to a single tooth, and your grandmother whistles when she talks. But it's still a quiet shame, one you carry like a splinter under the tongue. Scholars still argue about just how bad Victorian dental health really was, especially in rural areas. Some suggest it wasn't as universally awful as stereotypes claim. After all, many people did make an effort to care for their teeth with what they had. Others argue it was much worse than we can imagine, especially for the poor, whose diets were limited and whose access to care was non-existent. Regardless, there's one thing everyone agrees on. If you're reading this now and have access to a toothbrush, you're already ahead of the game. And it's not just the pain, it's the infection. A bad tooth doesn't sit in your mouth like a rotten stump. It spreads, it festers, it pushes up into your sinus or down into your jaw, and suddenly your face is swollen, your fever's climbing, and your odds of dying from something as simple as a molar infection just jumped significantly. No one knows the word sepsis yet, but they know the smell. That sweet, rotten scent that means someone's jawbone is decaying from the inside out. Some turn to folk remedies when the pain gets too much. A clove wedged against the gum, a hot brick wrapped in cloth and held to the cheek. One old man in your village swears by chewing on yarrow root while chanting a rhyme about Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of dental suffering. You try it once. The root tastes like dirt, and you forget the words halfway through the chant. Still, the pain goes away after 2 days. Probably not thanks to the rhyme, but you're not one to question results.
What hurts more than the teeth, though, is the knowledge that they won't get better. Unlike a broken arm or a cut, a ruined tooth stays ruined. It's a countdown, and every year knocks another out. By your 20s, you'll be chewing with your gums. By your 40s, if you even make it that far, you'll be sipping broth and pretending it's stew. And yet, you smile. Toothless, bloody, crooked, you still smile. Because pain is part of life, and your life never had a chance to be painless. You wake up sore, you go to bed sore, and in between, you do your best not to let the rotting inside you show too much on the outside. You wake up hungry. That's not new. Hunger is your default setting, like damp clothes or sore feet. But this morning it gnaws a little harder than usual. Your stomach makes a sound like an old cupboard creaking open, and you press your hand against it as if that might quiet the noise. It doesn't. It never does. You dress slowly in the same itchy shirt and trousers you wore yesterday and the day before that, and walk into the main room where your mother is stirring a pot over the fire. Whatever's inside smells faintly like boiled sock. Porridge, she says flatly. But it's a lie. It's water, oats, and hope. Mostly water. It's thin enough to drink, and that's how most of your meals go. Slurp, swallow, hope it sticks. Food is survival, not pleasure. Every meal is a negotiation between what you want and what you have, and the answer is usually root vegetables, stale bread, and anything that hasn't gone green yet. Breakfast is porridge if you're lucky, sometimes a crust with lard. Dinner, meaning the midday meal, is usually a bowl of boiled cabbage and potatoes. Supper is whatever's left. If it's a feast day, maybe there's a piece of boiled bacon. Or if your father managed to trap something, a stringy rabbit with more bones than meat. No seasoning, salt maybe, but spices are exotic things city people whisper about while you chew your turnip and dream of not chewing another turnip ever again. You learn to be creative. Bread is fried in grease and called pudding. The water is boiled with onion peels and called broth. A dried apple that survived the winter becomes dessert. You eat slowly to trick your body into thinking there's more. You chew every bite as if it owes you money. Sometimes your family barters with the neighbors, some eggs for a jug of milk, or a jar of pickled beets for a chunk of cheese. If you're especially desperate, you trade labor for leftovers. You once spent a whole afternoon shoveling cow dung just to earn a heel of rye bread and a spoonful of dripping. It was the best meal you had all month. Meat is rare, so rare that when it appears, everyone stares at it for a moment in disbelief. On Christmas, if the pig survived the year without dropping dead or being stolen, your father might butcher it behind the house, hanging the carcass on a tree limb while you and your siblings gather around like it's a holy ritual. You remember the smell: blood, hay, cold air, and something thick and iron-like that made you both nauseous and ravenous. The bacon is salted, the sausage is stuffed, and every scrap is used. Even the trotters are boiled. You eat like kings for a week, then it's back to rudderbagger stew. Rats are a fact of life, not a delicacy. But there's an old man in your village who swears they're edible if you skin them right and roast them over. You're not that desperate yet, but you've seen children nibble roasted squirrel tails.
Anyway, not because they fit, but because they're all you've got. It's the Victorian countryside, after all. Fashion hasn't arrived here yet, and when it does, it'll be wearing someone else's boots and smelling like boiled sheep. Speaking of boots, yours are a tragedy. Hand-me-downs from your cousin, who was half a foot shorter and had a limp that warped the sole. There's a hole in the left toe, so your sockless foot pokes out like a grub. When it rains, and it often does, your boot fills up and squelches with every step. You try to patch it with a bit of wax cloth and twine, but it never holds. So you walk around with a permanent chill in your toes and the faint sound of your dignity sloshing with every footfall. If you're a girl, the situation is somehow worse. Your dress is made of coarse wool that rubs your skin raw at the neck and armpits. It was dyed blue once,
Now it's the color of despair and chimney soot. The hem has been let down and stitched back up so many times it resembles a topographical map. Your petticoat, assuming you're lucky enough to have one, is patched in at least 4 places. And your corset, if you even get to wear one, is a second-hand monstrosity that laces unevenly and pinches like it's holding a grudge. Corsets in the countryside aren't for beauty, they're for structure, like scaffolding for a collapsing body. You wear one not to look elegant, but to keep your spine from folding while you bend over a wash basin or haul a sack of potatoes twice your weight. The tightness keeps your ribs in place and your stomach flat, which makes it harder to breathe, but easier to shut up and work. You learn to suck in and smile through the dizziness. Underclothes are optional. Some days it's too cold to go without. Other days it's too wet to bother. Your one pair of long underwear might be hanging by the hearth, still soggy from wash day. So you go bare and pray the wind doesn't sneak up your hem and remind you of your vulnerability. Laundering clothes is a major production. You soak them in a mix of ash and water, scrub with a rock or wooden paddle, then rinse in the stream if the stream isn't frozen. Your knuckles split open from the cold, and the soap makes your hands burn for hours. But if you don't do it, the stink builds and even the pigs start avoiding you. Everyone smells. It's a universal truth out here. Sweat, mildew, old wool, and something faintly sour. Your Sunday best is a slightly cleaner version of your weekday rags, and even then you're expected to keep a stiff upper lip while your thighs chafe and your boots bite. The vicar once gave a sermon about the virtue of cleanliness, and your mother muttered under her breath, "He's never bathed his own drawers, has he?" Here's a strange little fringe detail. Some people in the countryside believe that wearing red flannel against the skin could prevent illness. So you might find yourself wrapped in a shirt dyed the shade of dried blood, convinced it'll protect you from catching the ague or bad humors. Does it work? Of course not, but at least it hides the stains. There is no such thing as a wardrobe. Clothes are folded sometimes, but mostly just draped over hooks or chairs or left in a corner until someone needs them. And you share everything. Your brother's shirt becomes your sister's nightgown. Your uncle's vest ends up on a child who doesn't even know what a vest is for. There's no embarrassment in it, just exhaustion. Clothes are tools, not statements. Unless you count the statement, "I am cold, damp, and doing my best." Hats are sacred, though. A hat marks a person's place in the world. Your father wears a flat cap that smells like tobacco and sheep grease. Your mother ties her hair in a faded kerchief, unless she's going to church, in which case she wrestles it into a bonnet that's been repaired so many times it looks like a papier-mâché project. If you're a boy, you might get your first real hat around 10, a soft, floppy thing that immediately blows off in the wind and lands in a ditch. You retrieve it, now soggy, and wear it proudly anyway. Shoes, when they exist, are a constant source of pain. Most are ill-fitting, made of thick leather that doesn't flex. Blisters turn into open sores. Socks, if you have any, are knitted from rough wool and often full of holes. Some children wrap their feet in rags. Others go barefoot for months at a time, even in winter. You've seen kids with blue toes and cracked heels so bad that they can't walk without limping. No one calls it abuse, it's just life. Scholars sometimes argue that rural clothing in the Victorian period was practical and durable. That's the nice way of saying it was uncomfortable, ugly, and often made from whatever was cheapest. The wool was coarse and rarely dyed. Linen was saved for those who could afford more than one shirt. Lace, ruffles, buttons that matched, those were city luxuries. Out here you fasten your coat with a safety pin and thank the heavens the sleeves are still attached. But there's pride too. Your mother mends every tear with hands worn from years of needlework. She embroiders a tiny flower at the hem of your apron, not for fashion, but as a secret message. I love you, even if the world doesn't. Your father patches his boots with leftover leather from a broken saddle. Your sister stitches her name into her scarf so no one can steal it without guilt. These small acts of defiance are your version of beauty. On Sundays, you dress your absolute best. You scrub your face raw, polish your boots with lard, and button your shirt all the way up, even if the collar chokes you a little. For a few hours, you walk like your clothes matter, like you're someone worth seeing. The vicar nods at you. The older girls glance your way.
For a few hours, your patched-up body feels almost presentable. Then, the rain starts. Your boots soak through, your hat blows off, and just like that, you're back to the wet, itchy, grimy reality of the Victorian countryside. You tug your collar tighter and keep walking. It starts before dawn. A rooster you hate screams like it's auditioning for a tragedy, and the cold air crawls into your bones before you've even opened your eyes. Your back aches, your hands throb. You fell asleep next to the hearth and woke up halfway under a table, mouth dry and legs tangled in your little brother's feet. No one says good morning. There's no time for that. You rise with the miserable discipline of someone who doesn't get to choose rest. Your first job of the day is hauling water, then mucking out the stools, then chopping kindling with a hatchet that's older than you and just slightly sharper. All of this happens before you've had breakfast, which, as always, is a bowl of something gray and forgettable. After that, your day truly begins. Work isn't something you do, it's something you are. You're a laborer, even as a child, and unless a miracle occurs, say your uncle dies and leaves you his wilty light shop, you'll die a laborer too. If you're on a farm, your tasks shift with the seasons. Spring is planting, summer is weeding, autumn is harvest, and winter is everything that makes you wish you were ill just to have an excuse to stop. But not all jobs are out in the field. Let's say you're old enough now, maybe 12 or 13, and you've been offered something new. Work in the local mill. It sounds better than the fields, but it's not. It's loud, dark, and full of dust. The spinning machines scream like angry ghosts, and the floor is always slick from oil and spilled grain. You keep your sleeves tight because if one gets caught, it pulls more than the cloth. You've seen it happen. 1 second a boy is feeding the loom, the next his arm is gone, and the screams don't stop for hours. Or maybe you work in a mine. Not coal, too posh for this corner of the countryside. Maybe tin or slate, crouching in tunnels so tight you can't stretch your legs for 8 hours straight. You carry buckets of rubble up a slippery incline, your fingers bleeding, your lungs full of something dark and permanent. There is a superstition that whistling underground angers the spirits, so no one makes a sound except for the occasional moan or cough. You come home coated in dust that never quite washes off.
7. Breaking open grain while praying not to hit your own foot. The pay is half a loaf and maybe a coin if the farmer's feeling generous. He rarely is. And let's not forget chimney work. You've heard of boys, tiny ones, hired to crawl up into chimneys and sweep out the soot with stiff brushes. It's illegal in some parts, but that doesn't stop the desperate. You heard about a boy who got stuck halfway up and suffocated before anyone could get him out. They didn't retrieve the body, just bricked it up and started using the other chimney. If you're a girl, the jobs are just as awful, only quieter. You might be sent to a wealthier house in the village as a scullery maid, which is a fancy term for a person who does everything no one else wants to. You wake before the household, scrub pans so black they reflect no light, and keep your eyes down at all times. The mistress might slap you for breathing too loudly or for dropping a spoon. You sleep on a pile of rags near the back door. You eat leftovers if there are any. Sometimes you get 1 day off a month, sometimes not. There's a disturbing little fringe fact that gets glossed over in the history books. Cider vats. Rural laborers often worked in cider production during apple season. It sounds charming, pressing apples into drink, but those massive wooden vats were notorious death traps. The fermenting cider produced enough carbon dioxide to suffocate anyone who leaned in too far. Every autumn, someone drowns silently in a barrel of cider fumes. 1 second you're checking the pulp, the next your face hits the juice and you never come back up. Work accidents are common and almost never reported. A crushed hand? Wrap it in cloth and hope it stops bleeding. A broken rib? Stay home for a day if you can afford to, then back to it. If you can walk, you can work. If you can stand, you can carry. If you can breathe, you're not dead yet. There are no workers' rights, no safety regulations, no off days. You work when you're sick, you work when you're bleeding, you work when you can't feel your fingers from the cold. And you do it with the knowledge that if you stop,
someone else is waiting to take your place. There's always another hungry boy, another poor girl, another desperate body who'll do the job for less. Historians like to argue whether rural laborers had it better than factory workers in the cities. The cities had smog and endless hours, yes, but the countryside had isolation, poverty, and back-breaking physical toil. You're not just tired out here, you're worn down from the inside, year after year, until your back curves and your hands lock, and your knees grind like rusted hinges. Fresh air doesn't help when your spine is shaped like a question mark. But for all the misery, there's a twisted kind of pride in your work. You know how to do things that others can't, how to tie a knot in one motion, how to lift a sack without splitting your back, how to spot a storm coming by the way the crows move. Your muscles remember the shape of a shovel, a scythe, a cart axle. You're not educated, not well fed, but you're skilled in the way that only survival can teach. At night, you fall into bed or floor or straw pile with your hands blistered and your legs trembling. You dream about doing it all again tomorrow, because you will. There's no other path, no promotion, no retirement. You work until your body quits or until you're buried behind the church with the rest of the poor souls who never made it out. Because out here, in the rotten heart of rural Victorian life, work doesn't just define you, it slowly destroys you.
Week's most decent meal. Maybe a stew, maybe a small roast if your family's saved up. It's never enough, but it's warm and you eat it slowly, savoring the moment. Then your father falls asleep in his chair, your mother knits by the fire, and you sit in silence, not because you're peaceful, but because no one has the energy to speak. You'd think Sunday would be restful, a day of peace, but it isn't. It's a performance, a chore dressed in its finest apron, a reminder that God is watching, even when you're cold, itchy, bored, and starving. You fall asleep that night with a prayer in your head, something between gratitude and begging. Love doesn't arrive in the countryside with fanfare or flowers. It slinks in quietly, somewhere between a shared chore and a sideways glance in the hayfield. If you're waiting for roses, sonnets, or dramatic declarations of passion, you're going to be disappointed. Romance here is a luxury no one can afford, like clean water or privacy. You don't fall in love so much as stumble into it, usually muddy and confused, with half your teeth missing and your future already decided by someone else. Courtship, such as it is, happens under the watchful eyes of everyone. Villages are small, and secrets are impossible. If you talk to someone twice in the same week, you're interested, 3 times, and the neighbors are already imagining your wedding and speculating how many children you'll have before you both keel over. Your mother will raise an eyebrow. Your father might grunt in vague approval. If you're really unlucky, your aunt will start crocheting you matching pillowcases before you've even held hands. There's no dating, not in the way you're probably imagining it. There are no long walks through candlelit gardens. There are no getting-to-know-each-other talks over tea. What you get is proximity and practicality. You fetch water at the same time. You pass each other on the way to the mill. You maybe talk at the fair surrounded by the scent of manure and meat pies. And if you're bold, you sit next to them at church, a full inch closer than necessary. That's flirting in rural Victorian England. Subtle disobedience and the faintest hint of a smile. You meet someone. Let's say his name is Thomas. He's not the handsomest in the village. One ear is a little higher than the other, but he has 2 working boots and knows how to string a rabbit snare. That puts him solidly in the top third of eligible bachelors. He helps his father repair carts, smells like sawdust most days, and once you caught him feeding a biscuit to a stray dog behind the chapel. That counts for more than good teeth. Or maybe you're Thomas. You've noticed Mary, 3rd daughter of the Carter family, quiet, practical, and quick with her hands. She sings when she thinks no one's listening. She stitched the same apron 3 times and still makes it look presentable. You don't exactly know how to say you like her, so you offer to carry her water bucket one day. She lets you. That's a yes. Courting involves very few words and a lot of awkward silence. You might be allowed to walk someone home after church, just not too close, and definitely not through the woods. That's how babies happen.
You're allowed to bring a gift, if it's food, something you baked, or stole, or traded for. A bruised apple is practically a proposal. A scrap of ribbon, a declaration of war on her father's patience. Every interaction is a gamble. You can't afford to waste time on a match that won't work. And the whole village is watching for signs. A touch on the arm, a smile held a second too long. Even if you don't mean anything by it, the rumor mill does. And once your names are linked, breaking it off becomes a scandal. So most people just go with the current. You're already expected to marry someone from the village, probably someone your family's known forever. Maybe even a cousin. Not too close a cousin, hopefully, but the options are limited. There's a phrase you hear often, a good match. It doesn't mean love. It means land, or tools, or a shared cow. A good match is someone who won't starve you, someone who can help you raise children without dying too early. Your heart is a secondary concern. Practicality rules everything. Compatibility is measured in work ethic and the ability to survive a harsh winter without complaining too much. Here's a fringe fact that makes modern hearts shudder. In some rural communities, parents arrange courtships the same way they arrange livestock trades. A pig for a daughter, a few acres for a willing son. You might laugh, but that pig could feed a family through February. Emotion is a risk. Pigs are reliable. And yet, sometimes love sneaks in anyway. Maybe you're working together on harvest day, and he slips you the choicest apple from the tree. Maybe she stitches your name into a handkerchief and pretends it was just an accident. Maybe your hands brush in the barn, and neither of you pulls away fast enough. Those are the moments that matter. Brief, quiet flashes of rebellion against the gray monotony of survival. There's danger too. A kiss stolen in the woods can lead to more, and more can lead to trouble. If a girl ends up in the family way without a ring on her finger, her life is all but over. She becomes gossip fodder, a walking cautionary tale, a servant to some distant relative until the child is born and quietly placed elsewhere. The father, if he's around, may be forced to marry her, usually grudgingly, or may vanish entirely. Shame is a currency, and it's mostly spent on women. Some couples run. They leave for the city, looking for anonymity, work, anything but the stifling certainty of village life. Most return within months, penniless, sick, and more hopeless than when they left. A few succeed, vanish into the fog, and become ghost stories parents tell to other young lovers. Don't be like them. Stay put. Be sensible. Scholars still argue over how much romance factored into rural Victorian marriages. Some believe love was irrelevant, a byproduct at best. Others think it survived quietly in the background, in shared chores, exchanged glances, and the gentle kindness that grows over years of weathering life together. Maybe both are true. Maybe love doesn't bloom big and bright here. It's too windy for that. Maybe it's a stubborn little weed growing between the cracks of your day, hanging on no matter how many times you forget to water it. Eventually, whether by pressure, necessity, or genuine affection, you marry. There's no fanfare, a simple ceremony in the church, a new apron,
A secondhand suit, maybe a meat pie if your families have saved up. You don't get a honeymoon, you get chores. You move into a cottage that looks like every other, and you start a life that looks exactly like the one you grew up in. But on some nights, when the chores are done and the fire is warm, you sit next to the person you chose or were given, and they reach out, take your hand, and squeeze it just once. And maybe, in that squeeze, you feel something real. The wedding was simple. One quick ceremony, 3 hymns sung through cracked lips, and a stale fruitcake that had been passed around more times than anyone could count. Now you're married, and within hours all the mystery and anticipation collapses into something that feels more like a work contract than the start of anything beautiful. You're not just joined together, you're merged, like 2 overworked oxen tied to the same yoke, trudging through the same mud toward the same grim destination. If you're the bride, you move into your husband's family home, which is a generous way of saying you squeeze into the already crowded cottage where his parents, his 2 unmarried brothers, and a baby with a cough that sounds like the end of all things currently live. There's no such thing as privacy. Not for conversations, not for arguments, and certainly not for what happens or doesn't happen on your wedding night. If you're lucky, the curtain around the bed stays up and the children stay asleep. If you're not, someone snores through the entire awkward ordeal. There is no honeymoon, no romantic getaway. You don't travel because no one here travels unless they're fleeing something or being buried. You wake up the next morning and do what you've always done. Only now there's someone beside you breathing heavily, taking up half the blanket and most of the room. If you're a woman, your workload doubles overnight. You're now responsible for cooking, washing, mending, nursing, and pretending you're happy about it. If you're a man, you now have one more mouth to feed and maybe, if the church is feeling generous, a few extra stares of approval when you show up on Sunday with a wife in tow. Marriage is not the end of your struggles, it's a multiplication. Your lives are tied together, yes, but mostly in the way two donkeys are tied to the same broken cart. You pull, you stumble, you curse under your breath, and you hope the wheels don't fall off before winter sets in. And the in-laws? Oh, they're delightful. His mother watches your every move, clucks her tongue if the broth is too thin, and rearranges your laundry pile just to assert dominance. His brothers take up space, eat like pigs, and leave their boots wherever you're most likely to trip on them. If you so much as sigh too loudly, someone mutters about young wives these days, and suddenly you're being told how your mother kept house, as if you didn't come from the exact same rutting village with the same leaking roofs and the same lice-riddled bedding. If you're a man, you probably feel the walls closing in too. You're not the head of the household yet. That honor still belongs to your father, whose word is law and whose temper is inversely proportional to how much ale he's consumed. Your wife looks at you like she expects something: tenderness, wisdom, possibly dinner. But you have no tenderness left, only blisters, only aching muscles, and barely a penny in your pocket. You want to give her something more, maybe even love her properly, but you've got 2 pigs to clean, a fence to mend, and a field full of dying cabbages. Children come quickly, too quickly in fact. The first is usually conceived before the last wedding hymn has faded into memory. There's no birth control, not really. Rumors of sheep bladder sheaths and herbal teas exist, but they're expensive, unreliable, or condemned by the church. So the babies come, and come, and come. Your body becomes a calendar. 9 months on, a few weeks off, and then it starts again. If you're the wife, your spine bends, your stomach never quite recovers, and you learn to carry pain like it's a child in your arms. Constant, inconvenient, and always crying. You start to forget what silence sounds like. Between the baby's howling, your husband's coughing, and the general din of a house packed with people and livestock, your ears never stop ringing. Nights are restless. Days are worse. You'll learn to work while breastfeeding, while bleeding, while dizzy from hunger. You don't stop. You're not allowed to. Marriage gave you a new row, but not a softer life. No one gets softness here. And the fights? Oh, they happen. You snap over spilled water. You shout over burned bread. You argue in hisses because anything louder brings the whole family in like wolves sniffing blood. There are no private arguments. There are only family debates, village gossip, and the growing fear that maybe you married someone you don't actually like very much. Still, divorce is not an option, not for the rural poor. It's expensive, scandalous, and practically unthinkable unless someone commits outright murder or runs off with a traveling magician. You stay. You endure. You grit your teeth when he drinks too much and slurs insults he'll pretend not to remember. You hold your tongue when she cries into her apron and calls you useless. Love becomes something whispered between chores, if it exists at all. Some scholars argue that marriages among the rural working class were more cooperative than affectionate, that couples formed partnerships based on survival, not sentiment, and there's some truth in that. You rely on each other the way broken shutters rely on rusted hinges. Neither ideal, both necessary.
But other accounts suggest tenderness did exist in pockets. A hand held under the table, a laugh shared during a walk home from church, a kiss on the forehead that no one sees. Here's a strange historical quirk. In some villages, it was customary for newlyweds to parade through the streets with a wooden spoon and a ladle tied together, symbolizing their new domestic duties. Romantic? In the way a livestock auction is romantic. But hey, at least it's tradition. You mark your days with routines, shared chores, shared meals, shared exhaustion. You don't need to talk much. You know each other's silences. You finish each other's sentences, mostly because there's only so many ways to say, "Did you feed the chickens?" or "We're out of soap again." The honeymoon, if it ever existed, was lost somewhere between the latrine and the pig pen. And yet, somehow, there are moments when he rubs your shoulders without being asked, when she brings you a biscuit she saved from market, when you both laugh at something the baby did, and for 1 minute, the cottage feels like home, and not just another room you'll eventually die in. The moments are small, but they're yours, because in this place, marriage isn't magic. It's mud and mending. It's surviving together when the world keeps trying to split you apart.
Could legally be classified as soup. You scrub with lye soap that burns like betrayal, and afterward you feel slightly cleaner, but still smell like goat. There's a single window in the cottage, maybe two if you live in what your neighbors call the good end of the village. The panes are wavy and warped, and in winter, frost creeps across them in delicate, deadly patterns. The light that filters through is weak and dusty, more of a suggestion than illumination. You make do with candles or rushlights, dipped in tallow and stuck in broken bottles. Storage space is a joke. Every spare inch is packed with tools, crates, preserves, and mystery piles that no one wants to claim responsibility for. You hang clothes from rafters, stack pots under the bed, and stuff spare shoes into cracks in the wall. You have one drawer for everything important. Marriage certificate, birth tokens, a rusty needle, 3 buttons, and a bit of twine you're convinced will come in handy one day. Here's a quirky little fringe fact. In some villages, it was believed that building a small alcove or witch hole into the chimney would ward off evil spirits. A tiny nook near the hearth where a charm or amulet could be placed. You have one. Your grandmother stuffed it with lavender and an old brass button. You don't touch it, just in case. Rats are a given, mice too. You hear them at night, scampering across the rafters, gnawing at the walls. Cats help, but they can't be everywhere. Sometimes you wake to the sounds of a scuffle in the dark and pray it's just the dog chasing shadows. You decorate where you can. A flower in a cracked cup, a dried herb bundle hanging from the beam, a torn bit of lace on the mantel. They don't make the house feel grand, but they make it yours. You notice these details more when you're tired, when the house is quiet, when the fire is burned down and you're curled up with a blanket that smells faintly of wet hay, wondering if you'll ever live somewhere with clean walls and a door that shuts without argument. Historians love to point out how quaint rural cottages look in paintings, but they never mention the mildew, the mice, the cold that seeps up through the floor and into your spine. Charming, they say. They've clearly never had to brush a centipede off their pillow or break the ice in their wash basin with a hammer. Still, it's home. Your little crooked box of barely contained chaos. It's where you laugh, cry, bleed, scream, sleep, love, and sometimes pray when you remember how. It's where life begins, ends, and everything in between tries not to collapse through the floorboards. It might be rotting, but it's yours. There are no secrets in the village. Not really. Not when every window gawks, every floorboard groans, and every neighbor knows the sound of your front door better than you do. You live elbow to elbow with people who've known your family for generations, who remember when your mother was born, when your uncle ran off to sea, and when you lost that tooth on the church steps. They remember everything, and they talk. Oh, do they talk. Gossip is the village's second language. It floats through the air like chimney smoke, thin, inescapable, and impossible to scrub out once it settles.
It starts in the bread queue, travels through the blacksmith shop, detours past the well, and always ends up by the church gate, where the widows gather like crows to pick over the newest sins. No one's safe. Not you, not the vicar, not the cow with a crooked leg who may or may not be cursed, depending on which neighbor you ask. You learn early how to listen without being caught. There's an art to it. You keep your eyes down, your hands busy, and your ears wide open. You pick up everything. Who's behind on their rent, who's in trouble, who's got a cousin visiting that no one's ever met, and who mysteriously wears trousers that aren't patched. That last bit alone will keep tongues wagging for a week. But listening is only half the game. Sooner or later you talk too, because staying silent makes you suspicious. You'll learn how to phrase things just so. How to say, "Well, I heard," and raise your eyebrows like you're reluctantly revealing a sacred truth. You never claim to know. That's dangerous. You simply pass it along. A relay runner in a race no one wants to admit they're running. The wolves have ears, they say. But in your village, so do the trees, the sheep, and the bread ovens. You once sneezed during a whispered conversation behind the barn, and 2 hours later, your aunt asked if you were getting the fever, like young Clara. Clara had the fever 3 weeks ago. That's how fast it moves. Some gossip is harmless. Little things. A chicken that laid an egg shaped like a pear. The shoemaker's apprentice getting caught singing to himself while fixing a boot. Your cousin being seen walking with someone he definitely isn't betrothed to. That sort of thing keeps the day moving. It's entertainment, really. The countryside doesn't offer much else besides weather and livestock. But other gossip, it's weaponized. A rumor in the wrong place at the wrong time can ruin someone. You've seen it happen. A woman loses a baby, and suddenly the whispers start. Maybe she didn't want it. Maybe she did something. A man's cow dies mysteriously, and now half the village is convinced his neighbor hexed it. Old men cross themselves when they pass the house, and children throw pebbles at the windows just to see if the devil will look out. Here's a strange, if not totally surprising, fringe fact. In some rural villages, people kept witch bottles buried beneath doorways to protect themselves from malicious gossip. Literal glass bottles filled with hair, nails, and pins designed to trap evil intentions. You think it's ridiculous, but then again, you've considered making one. It's worse for women, of course. It always is. A man can drink, swear, and stumble out of the alehouse with his pants half undone, and people will just shake their heads. Boys will be boys. But if a woman walks home alone after dark, someone starts spinning tales. If she's unmarried past 25, they assume she's either barren, cursed, or peculiar. If she's too pretty, she must be tempting someone's husband. If she's not pretty enough, she's obviously jealous and plotting something foul. You try not to care what people say. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, but you still fix your hair before leaving the house. You still smile politely when the butcher's wife glares at you for reasons you'll never understand. You still lie awake at night, wondering if the comment you made at the market about the size of the parsnips was interpreted as some kind of insult. And once you're on the other side of the whispers, once you become the subject instead of the spectator, it changes everything. A cousin of yours, Martha, caught the attention of a traveling peddler. He gave her a ribbon, she smiled at him. They disappeared behind a hedgerow for 20 minutes. By nightfall, the whole village had her pregnant with twins and exiled to a convent. She's still here, still unmarried, and still gets the side eye every time she goes to fetch milk. Some try to fight the gossip, a bold word, a slammed door, a cold stare that says, "I heard what you said, and I don't care." But those responses just feed the fire. "Did you see the way she looked at me?" someone says. And just like that, it starts again.
There are moments when the gossip turns deadly serious. Someone accuses someone else of theft or blasphemy or worse. You've heard stories of men being chased out of town over a rumor that started with a misheard prayer. You've seen a woman forced to stand at the back of church for a month because someone said she was seen whispering in the graveyard after dusk, talking to spirits, they said, or devils. She was visiting her mother's grave. Historians sometimes debate whether gossip in rural Victorian life functioned as social control or communal bonding. The truth is, it's both. It keeps people in line, but it also connects them. You might hate the whispering, but you also lean in when something juicy floats by. You participate, you contribute. Because being in the know is power. Being out of the know, that's a fate worse than poverty. But occasionally, gossip does something good. It alerts you when someone's sick, when someone's hungry, when someone's husband hasn't come home in 3 days and might be face down in a ditch. The whispers carry warnings as well as curses. They say who needs help, who's hurting, who might not survive the winter. And when the village listens, really listens, it can come together, not with fanfare, but with bread, broth, and warm blankets placed quietly at someone's door. So you watch what you say, and you watch what others say about you. You practice neutrality. You perfect the raised eyebrow, the sigh that could mean anything. And above all, you never repeat anything unless you're sure it's already been said twice. Because in a village like yours, your reputation is your second skin, and it peels just as easily. You don't steal, of course. Not really. Maybe a bit of firewood when no one's looking, a bruised apple that rolled off the cart, a spoonful of treacle from a jar that probably wasn't sealed too tightly to begin with. But you're not a thief. You're just trying to survive. Everyone does it, even if no one says it out loud. It's not about greed. It's about getting through another week when your stomach growls louder than your conscience. But the law doesn't see it that way. The law, in all its polished boot glory, sees black and white, right and wrong. Bread in your pocket? You're a criminal. Didn't pay your taxes on that chicken? You're a fraud. Took some coal from the roadside pile, even though it's freezing and your baby's lips are blue? Clearly, you're a danger to society. The punishments are harsh, always, because rural justice isn't about rehabilitation, it's about example, and examples get made on a regular basis. The village stocks sit in the square like a threat, carved from wood and iron. Everyone pretends to ignore them, but they're always there, always ready. You remember the first time someone was locked in them. A boy no older than 15, caught stealing a hen. He swore he thought it was his aunt's, but no one believed him. They strapped his wrists in and left him there all day in full view. Children threw turnip peels, old women spat. By sundown, his face was raw from wind, and his pride never quite recovered. He moved to another village soon after, or ran. You never found out. Petty crime is everywhere. A hoe goes missing, a sack of oats turns up half empty, someone's cow gets milked overnight and no one can prove it. People mutter, accuse, argue, but rarely act until it's something bigger. A barn set on fire, a pig slaughtered and left in pieces behind the alehouse. Then the constable comes. He's not local. He arrives from the nearest town wearing a uniform that's just a bit too clean for these parts. He looks at your village like it's a nest of vermin he's been sent to clear. Questions follow, so do accusations. And when no one confesses, the punishment often lands on the one with the worst reputation. Justice by rumor. Your cousin once got whipped for stealing a silver spoon. He didn't do it. Everyone knew that. But he had the face of someone who might, and that was enough. He stood shirtless in front of the church while the constable lashed his back with a knotted rope. 15 strokes. The sound still rings in your ears when the wind is just right. His mother wept. His father said nothing. That was the worst part. Some crimes are more final. Horse theft, for example. That's not a slap on the wrist or a stint in the stocks. That's hanging. No trial, no debate, no forgiveness. A horse is worth more than most men around here. You've seen it happen. A man swinging from a tree on the edge of town, boots dangling, face blue, and a sign pinned to his chest, thief. The sign is more for you than for him. And the gallows. Sometimes they travel, a set of collapsible beams and ropes brought in on a cart like a carnival attraction. The whole village comes out to see, even if they pretend not to enjoy it. Some bring children, others bring bread. You watch, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to, as if looking away means you don't understand the stakes. The man up there could be you, or your brother, or that neighbor who keeps chickens a little too close to the road. Here's a grisly little fringe fact.
In some rural communities, the bodies of hanged men were left swinging for days. For the crows, they'd say, a warning, a lesson. The law wasn't just about punishing the guilty, it was about terrifying the rest. You'd think it would make crime disappear. It didn't. Hunger always wins in the end. But it's not all brutality. Sometimes there's the workhouse instead. If you're caught stealing or if you simply can't pay your debts, they send you there. You don't need to commit a crime to end up inside. Just being poor is usually enough. You've never been there, but you've heard stories. Cramped rooms, endless chores, food that barely qualifies as edible. Families separated, children made to scrub floors until their hands bleed. They call it relief. You call it slow suffocation with clean walls. Some turn to poaching. It's illegal, of course. The forests are owned by the local gentry, and all the animals in them, from the tiniest rabbit to the most majestic stag, are considered private property. But meat is meat. You know a man who goes out at dusk with a snare and a knife, comes back with something hidden under his coat, and sells it to trusted buyers in the village. If he's caught, he'll lose a hand, but his family eats. Theft is only part of the picture. There's fighting, too. Drunken brawls behind the alehouse, feuds between families that have lasted 3 generations over a fence post or a disputed marriage. You've seen a man chase another through the fields with a shovel. You've heard screaming in the night, followed by silence too deep to feel safe. Sometimes the church steps in. The vicar gives a sermon about righteousness, about resisting temptation, about how God sees all. He doesn't mention the landlord who raised the rent again, or the magistrate who lets his own sons off easy. The law may be blind, but it definitely listens to money. Historians argue whether the justice system in rural Victorian England was inherently cruel or simply reflective of the times. Some say it kept order in places where order was fragile. Others point out that most of the crimes punished were crimes of poverty, survival acts turned into moral failings. Either way, you learn quickly that the law is not your friend. It's a stick waiting to swing, a rope already tied, a name whispered behind closed doors. You keep your head down, you keep your hands busy, and when your neighbor's chickens go missing or someone's laundry disappears from the line, you don't ask questions. Because out here, innocence doesn't protect you. Only invisibility does.
12. She made it home barely, but she never walked quite right after that. People say she was never quite right in the head either, like the cold reached in and took something more than just warmth. You take precautions where you can. Hot bricks wrapped in cloth at the foot of the bed, socks patched together from other socks, boiled vinegar in a bowl to clean the air. But when your breath freezes in front of you and your fingernails turn gray, you start to wonder if all the layers in the world could ever make a difference. You light a candle and watch it flicker, pretending that tiny flame could fight the night. And then sometimes comes the fire. When heat is so scarce it becomes dangerous. Chimneys clogged with soot, sparks land where they shouldn't. Someone falls asleep too close to the flames. You wake to screaming, to smoke choking your lungs, to your mother throwing water from a cracked basin that's half ice. You've seen cottages burn to the ground, watched neighbors stand barefoot in the snow, weeping as all they owned melted into ash. You don't run toward the fire, you run through it, grabbing what you can. A kettle, a blanket, a child. Anything else is a luxury. Once you heard of a boy who drank antifreeze, not on purpose, just a bottle of something from the back of a cart, sweet and strange, a gift from a cousin who knew a man in town. It killed him within a day. You don't even know what antifreeze is, but you remember that story every time you drink anything unfamiliar in winter. Historians often debate how Victorian rural communities handled winter. Some claim the camaraderie, the gathering of families, the shared resources, the storytelling helped them survive. Others argue the season exposed the brutal gaps in the system, the inequality,
the neglect, the utter lack of preparation. Both are true. Sometimes the village came together. Sometimes it just crumbled in slow motion. You don't hope for spring anymore. Hope feels naive when your fingers are too stiff to sew and your legs tremble just from walking to the outhouse. You endure the season like you endure everything else. You mark the days by the frost patterns on the window, by how long it takes the fire to catch, by how many socks you're wearing, and whether or not you can feel your toes. When the snow finally begins to melt, it's not joy you feel, it's caution. The thaw brings floods, mud, disease. Things buried start to rise. Rotted vegetables, broken tools, memories you tried to forget. But it also brings birdsong. The first one you hear makes you stop in your tracks. A robin maybe, or a lark. It's not singing for you, but you let yourself pretend it is. You survived, just barely, and you'll have to do it again. But for now, the air no longer hurts when you breathe it. That's something. The fair arrives like thunder on a sunny day, sudden, loud, and full of barely contained chaos. You hear the first rumors a week before, that a cart's been spotted on the old road, that the tinkers are coming, that someone saw a dancing bear near the toll bridge. By the time the tents go up in the meadow past the church, the entire village has lost its collective mind. Children skip chores, old men sharpen their coins, and even your grimmest, most joy-resistant neighbors start scrubbing their shoes and planning excuses to wander down just for a look. You go, of course, everyone does. You put on your cleanest shirt, the one that only smells mildly of smoke, and you follow the crowd across the fields. The path is a mess of footprints, churned mud and chicken feathers, but you don't care. You hear the music before you see the fair itself. A shrill pipe, a drum, a fiddle playing far too fast for its own good. It's irresistible. You break into a jog. Then, suddenly, there it is. A chaotic sprawl of tents, carts, wagons, and shouting. Smoke from roasting meat curls into the air, mixing with the sense of sweat, ale, sawdust, and that one particular fairground smell that could only be described as goat-flavored panic. The fair has no organization, no logic. It's part marketplace, part performance, part fever dream. You can buy a roasted eel, throw a rock at a painted target to win a sausage, and watch a woman pretend to be possessed, all in the same 5 minutes. The first thing you do is try not to get robbed, because you will get robbed if you're not careful. Pickpockets are everywhere. Boys with quick hands, girls pretending to drop things so you'll look down while their friend slips a finger into your purse. You keep your coin tied inside your shirt, and still you pat your chest every few minutes just to make sure it hasn't evaporated. But even the threat of thievery can't spoil it. For one glorious day, the village isn't just mud and misery, it's color, sound, movement. You gape at the man juggling fire while standing on a barrel. You shriek with laughter when the strongest woman in Yorkshire lifts a pig above her head and dares the audience to do the same. A few brave lads try and nearly rupture something. Then there's the food. It's all bad for you, all of it. Greasy pies with fillings that defy classification. Bread so stale it could be used as a weapon. Sticky buns covered in something that might be honey or might be glue. You eat it all. Your stomach rebels almost immediately, but you keep going because this is the only day of the year where you get to choose what you eat, even if your choices are questionable meat or definitely poisoned apple. You drink ale that was likely brewed in a barrel last cleaned during the reign of Henry VII. It burns going down and makes you feel warm enough to take off your scarf. Within the hour, you're flushed, dizzy, and arm wrestling a farmer's son while two traveling musicians play a tune that sounds like it was written for drunkards and pigs. The fair isn't just about fun. It's also about business. Peddlers hawk pots, pans, ribbons, and lace, and miracle cures. Cures being used loosely. One man swears his tonic can regrow hair, fix your bowels, and make your husband stop snoring. You buy a tiny bottle just for the novelty. It tastes like vinegar and regret. You pass a fortune teller's tent. It's draped in tattered red cloth, and inside sits an old woman who stares at you with glassy eyes and murmurs, "You will cross water soon." You nod, though the nearest body of water is a pond full of dead frogs. Still, it's exciting. You feel important for a minute, like fate might care what happens to you. There's always one act that crosses the line. This year, it's a man who lets a badger bite his arm while he sings a hymn. People cheer, coins fly, you wince. Someone next to you said they saw him last year with a different arm. You don't ask. By evening, the fair becomes something else, something darker. The laughter gets louder, more desperate. The shadows stretch. People drink more, argue more. A fight breaks out near the jugglers and someone gets knocked into a tent pole. The whole thing collapses, sending pies and curses flying. The music doesn't stop, though. It never stops. Then come the lovers, hidden behind carts, in the hedge, slipping off hand in hand into the woods. If you're one of them, you don't care who sees. If you're not, you pretend not to notice. The fair always births a few scandalous stories, and by morning someone's virtue is gone and someone else is pretending they never were there at all. Here's a peculiar fringe fact. Some rural fairs used to feature mock weddings, temporary unions blessed by a costumed priest in a clown wig, just for laughs, they said. But a few couples took it seriously, and there are documented cases of people claiming their fairground wedding counted legally. The courts disagreed. Eventually, you stumble home, pockets empty, belly aching, ears still ringing from the fiddler's final tune. You smell of cider, sweat, and burnt sugar. Your feet are blistered. You probably caught something from the eel, but your heart feels lighter. For one single day, you were something more than tired. You were thrilled. You laughed too loudly. You danced badly. You felt like a person again. You collapse into bed without changing clothes. Your mother mutters about your muddy boots. Your little brother steals the fortune teller's ribbon you brought back. The baby cries, but you don't care. You fall asleep with sticky fingers and a half-eaten meat pie still in your pocket. Tomorrow, it's back to turnips and blisters. But tonight you dream of fire breathers and brass bands, of flashing lights and the smell of roasted chestnuts. And for a moment in that dream, you're not poor or hungry or cold. You're just alive. Bath night arrives like a seasonal flood, inevitable, chaotic, and deeply unpleasant. It's not that you don't want to be clean. You do, in theory. It's just that being clean costs water, fuel, time, and more energy than anyone in your house has left at the end of the week. So instead of regular washing, your family has developed a tradition. One full bath once a week. Maybe. Unless it's planting season or carving season, or it's just too bloody cold. You know.
13. Bath night is coming when the old tin tub is dragged out from its usual hiding spot behind the woodpile. It's dented, rust-speckled, and shaped like it was forged by someone who hated backs. It wobbles when you step into it, and heaven help you if the floor is uneven, which it is. A wedge of firewood gets stuffed underneath one side. That usually does the trick. Usually water comes next. Buckets upon buckets hauled from the well and heated in the iron pot over the fire. It takes hours to get enough for even a shallow soak. The process starts early in the afternoon with your mother muttering about how filthy everyone is, as if it's a personal betrayal. She ladles the hot water into the tub and adds just enough cold to avoid scolding the first bather, who of course is your father. He gets the best of it. The cleanest water, the warmest temperature, the longest soak. He sits in that tub like a king, scrubbing with a bar of lye soap and a piece of rough cloth, humming to himself, and leaving behind a ring of grime so dark it could qualify for parish registration.
Once he's out, your mother has her turn. She works fast out of modesty and necessity because by now the water's cooled and the fire needs tending. After her, the rest of you go in descending order of importance or size, depending on your mother's mood. The youngest gets the murkiest bath, a grim stew of other people's filth. You can't even pretend it's water by that point. It's body broth. You lower yourself in, gag a little, and start scrubbing anyway because not washing is worse. Your skin prickles with chill and shame. Sometimes you share. Siblings in pairs facing opposite directions, knees drawn up like shriveled parrots. There's no dignity in it, just a desperate dash to clean your armpits and hair before someone else splashes you in the face with a handful of used water. You use a jug to rinse, you use a cloth to scrape. You emerge damp, shivering, and somehow not feeling cleaner. You dry off with whatever's available, a scratchy towel, a flour sack, your own shirt if it's already wet. There's no privacy, just a vague attempt to turn away while dressing. The curtain hung between rooms is thin and full of holes. You hear everything. Dripping water, shifting feet, someone complaining that they lost their sock. It's not relaxing. It's barely hygienic, but it counts. You're clean, or clean enough to avoid your mother's disgusted sniff when she hugs you at church. The tub water is used again, sometimes for scrubbing the floor, sometimes for rinsing muddy boots, and on more than one horrifying occasion, for laundry. You pretend not to notice. Clean is relative. You'd think this once-a-week ritual would be sacred. It isn't. It's often interrupted. Someone forgets to boil enough water, the pig escapes and someone has to chase it across the village while half naked. A neighbor shows up at the door to borrow salt and walks in on your aunt standing in the tub singing about sin. You all pretend nothing happened, but the entire village knows by morning. Here's a filthy little fringe fact. Some rural families shared bathwater not just with each other, but with neighbors, rotating homes so everyone got a turn. Community baths in copper pots, usually accompanied by ale and awkward conversation. Let's get the dirt off together sounds like the start of a scandal, but really, it was just economy and necessity having a very uncomfortable marriage. Hair washing is a separate ordeal. It happens once a month, maybe. You heat water, use soap so harsh it turns your scalp red, and try not to scream as your mother drags a comb through the tangles. Lice fall out like confetti. If you're fancy, you rinse with vinegar. If not, you just deal with the sting and the smell. You braid your hair tight to keep it from getting worse. It does anyway. Soap is homemade or bartered. It smells like ashes and regret. It leaves your skin raw and your hands cracked, but it's better than nothing. Some women add herbs to make it smell nicer. Lavender if they can find it. Mint if they're desperate. Once you got a hold of a rose-scented bar from town that lasted 3 uses before being dropped in the fire by accident. You still mourn it. Bathing during winter is its own unique torment. The room never gets warm. You hover near the fire until it's your turn, then sprint to the tub like it's a race for your soul. You wash quickly, teeth chattering, steam rising from your skin like you're being exercised. You dress in front of the fire, trying to warm your clothes before pulling them on. Sometimes you cry quietly. It's not the cold, it's the everything. Historians often romanticize cleanliness among the Victorian poor, imagining petticoats flapping in the breeze and cheerful mothers washing rosy-cheeked children in sunlit basins. The truth is closer to horror than whimsy. Cleanliness was a luxury. Soap was expensive. Warm water took hours. Privacy didn't exist. And yet, people managed somehow. You think about what it must be like for the rich. Baths every day, perhaps servants to heat the water, towels as soft as dreams. You imagine stepping into a tub with clean water all to yourself, with soap that doesn't peel your skin off like a rotten potato. It feels like a fairy tale. You hold that thought in your mind as you scrub your knees, scraping away the week's grime and disappointment. After bath night, you feel slightly better. Not new, not fresh, just less awful. You crawl into bed, hair damp, skin stinging, and hope the clean feeling lasts longer than a day. It doesn't. By morning, you're sweaty again from chopping wood. By noon, there's soot on your cheeks and mud on your calves. But for a moment, you are clean, and that's enough until next week.
Cheapest available option, a common grave shared with others, marked by a wooden cross if someone remembers to carve one. These markers rarely last through the next winter. The wood rots, the names fade. Eventually, no one remembers who's buried where. The ground is dug again. The cycle repeats. Coffins are a luxury. If your family can scrape together the wood or borrow a second-hand box, you might get one. Otherwise, it's a shroud and a prayer. And yes, second-hand coffins are real. Some are built with trapdoors on the bottom. The body is lowered, the trap is sprung, and the coffin is reused. Efficient, if deeply unsettling. You pretend not to know. You walk behind the cart to the churchyard. There's no hearse, just a rickety wheelbarrow. Maybe a borrowed cart, depending on who has one to spare. You carry the body yourself if you have to. It's cold, the wind bites through your coals, and the road is muddy, no matter the season. The church stands silent, its doors open just enough to suggest mercy. The vicar mumbles the service, his voice half swallowed by the wind, and then it's over. The ground claims another. There are no headstones unless someone with money takes titty. Most graves are unmarked or remembered only by location, just past the twisted U or beside the fence near the north wall. Sometimes people visit, sometimes they don't. Grief looks different when you're poor. There's no time for dramatic mourning. You weep for a day, maybe two. Then it's back to the fields, because the pigs still need slop, and the roof still leaks, even when your heart's cracked in two. Women especially are expected to carry grief quietly. Black clothes, yes, if you have them. A black ribbon will do if not. But no wailing, no fainting, just a bowed head and a stronger grip on the laundry line. Men get away with drinking a bit more at the pub and blaming it on sorrow. You just get tired. The traditions are a strange blend of religion and folk magic. You stop the clocks, you cover the mirrors, and in some households, you even open a window to let the spirit escape. Some whisper prayers, others whisper warnings. Not to speak the name too often, not to touch the body's left hand, not to cry directly onto the coffin. You're not sure where these rules came from, but you follow them anyway, just in case. And then come the stories. Because once someone dies, they don't really leave, not entirely. You hear footsteps when the house is empty. You smell their soap on the wind. You find the teacup they used, unwashed, exactly where they left it. Maybe it's imagination, maybe not. No one dares to say. There's an accepted level of haunting that rural folks just tolerate, like damp walls or lice. You don't speak to the dead, but you don't ignore them either. Here's a wonderfully macabre fringe fact. In some Victorian villages, it was customary to take mourning photographs of the deceased, propping up their body, opening their eyes with wire, and posing them with family members. It sounds unthinkable now, but it was considered a final, loving memory. You've never seen a camera up close, but the idea chills you. Not the death, but the pretending, the attempt to freeze a moment that's already gone. Historians argue about how death shaped rural communities. Some say it created stronger bonds, forged through shared grief and communal ritual. Others point out that it hardened people, forced them to move on too quickly. You suspect both are true. You've seen people cry while peeling potatoes. You've seen laughter at funerals, not out of joy, but sheer exhaustion. Children learn about death early. There's no sheltering them. They help wash the body, they see the burial, they ask questions that no one knows how to answer. You knew death before you knew how to spell your name. You stopped being afraid of it around the same time you realized your life wasn't guaranteed to last past the next harvest. But even now, even with all you've seen, there's a weight to it.
a pause in your breath when someone coughs too long, a glance at the sky when a baby won't stop crying, a silent prayer when someone's late returning from the fields. You don't fear death, exactly. You just wish it would stop dropping by so often. And you wish, deep down, that when it finally comes for you, someone will care enough to remember your name. Entertainment in your village comes in two flavors, mildly pathetic or deeply unhinged. There is no theater, no music halls, no novels being passed around unless someone's uncle stole a penny dreadful from the town library and is now hiding it under a floorboard like it's contraband. You don't have leisure time per se. But when the work is done, or at least ignored long enough, people will scrape together what little imagination they have left and try to have some fun in their own strange, grubby, sometimes dangerous way. The most common form of entertainment, each other. That's right, people. You, your family, your neighbors, sitting around the hearth in the evening, telling stories that start with a grain of truth and balloon into heroic sagas of pig wrestling and narrow escapes from angry geese. You know the stories are exaggerated, but you laugh anyway. What else are you gonna do? Go to the opera? The alehouse is the unofficial village stage. After sunset, the regulars gather, cheeks ruddy, ale sloshing in cracked mugs, and tongues loosened just enough to provide entertainment or start a fist fight. Or both. One of the alehouse favorites is rat baiting. It's exactly what it sounds like. A barrel is filled with rats, and a dog is let loose to see how many it can kill before time out. People bet. People cheer. People pretend they're disgusted while placing their wagers. You've watched once, just once. The rats squealed, the dog howled, and someone passed out halfway through from either excitement or the smell. The whole building reeked of wet fur and stale beer. It was apparently a highlight of the month. Then there are the puppeteers, traveling performers who arrive with carts covered in tarps and eyes that haven't slept properly since the last plague scare. Their shows are chaotic masterpieces, wooden figures on sticks performing morality tales that quickly spiral into nonsense. A greedy landlord gets eaten by a crocodile. A milkmaid defeats the devil using a rolling pin and a prayer. The children scream with laughter. The adults pretend not to enjoy it, but they're the ones who toss coins into the hat at the end. Your favorite part, though, is the shadow plays. Someone stretches a sheet between two chairs, lights a lamp behind it, and starts crafting silhouettes with their hands or cut-out figures. There's a magic to it, crude as it is. A dog becomes a dragon. A man becomes a monster. You watch the shadows flicker and forget just for a moment how itchy your socks are or how empty your stomach feels. Games are improvised. There's Kick the Stone, which is exactly as thrilling as it sounds. There's Who Can Hold Their Breath the Longest, usually ending in someone fainting and someone else declaring victory while laughing too hard to stand. On special occasions, someone finds a deck of cards, missing 3 kings and a jack, and invents a whole new game around the gaps. Arguments follow, friendships fray. The game ends when someone storms off or the cards get accidentally thrown into the fire. Holidays offer the most elaborate diversions. May Day brings out the maypole, usually with ribbons that haven't been washed since the Napoleonic Wars. People dance in circles, trip over their feet, and pretend they're enjoying themselves, even as the mud tries to claim their shoes forever. Bonfire night is another big one. A towering stack of wood is set alight. Someone burns an effigy of a political figure nobody really understands, and children throw potatoes into the flames, which then explode spectacularly and singe someone's eyebrows. And then there's the entertainment that isn't exactly planned. Drunken brawls, public proposals that end in rejection, and 3 weeks of whispered mockery. Someone brings a musical instrument they think they can play, only to be booed after the first 5 notes. One time, a man brought a goat to the alehouse and claimed it could predict the future. It didn't, it just ate someone's scarf and then relieved itself on the floor. A particularly odd rural tradition involves dressing up as animals and running through the village at night to scare away spirits, or more likely to scare old men into dropping the tankards. You once joined in with a fox mask made of burlap and buttons. You tripped over a bucket and tore your skirt, but you swore you saw something flicker in the dark that wasn't entirely human. You still don't know what it was. Probably just a trick of the moonlight.